a wealth and legacy for other people while our communities continue to suffer.
You know, you're running a grassroots campaign, so you're not taking no money from PACs or corporations or developers or lobbyists. What is the significance of running a grassroots campaign?
And I'm probably the only true grassroots people-powered campaign that's out there right now. And the significance of that is that you are able to come into this campaign, much like Shirley Chisholm said, unboard and unboard. At this moment, I'm not beholden to anyone. I'm beholden to the people, and that's who I want to be beholden to. Because the people are investing in this city every day, it's time for them to start seeing a return on that investment.
Okay, let me ask you a question, Madam Mayor. If a domestic incident, you know, like the storming of the Capitol building took place in New York, how would you respond?
Well, listen, we have to respond harshly and swiftly. You know, first of all, you know, that's something that shouldn't happen. Like what happened at the Capitol is crazy to so many of us, right? But we have to make sure people are held accountable, and especially people in elected offices. So I would hold elected officials accountable. I would hold police officers accountable. Because when I was watching that on CNN, I saw some people with some woke NYPD hats on.
Sure.
So I'm taking attendance. Where were you the day this happened?
Pedro Castillo, the Peru Libre Party, Free Peru, has already begun to receive congratulations from around the world. It's beyond doubt that he won the June 6th presidential election 10 days ago. My God, the Peruvian Electoral Authority, ONPE, the ONPE. So the ONPE announced the final results. Castillo won 50.137%. 50.137%. This is 8.83 million votes versus 49.893%, which is 8.78 million votes. So what does that mean? I don't know. What does it look like? About maybe goddamn 100,000 or some shit? What's the difference between, so it's about 0.05 million? So what's 0.05 million? Is that 500,000 or 50,000? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if Pedro Castillo won by 1 point or a million. He's the goddamn president. He got 70,000 votes was the last time I checked. And they're not saying exactly what the numbers are, so we can only guesstimate. But what is 0.05? I guess we could do 0.05. 0.05. So you just 0.05 times a million. 0.05 times a million, and it'll just move it over, right? 0.05 times a million. 50,000. Right, 70,000, 50,000. However, Fujimori, the candidate of the right, has refused to concede. This is Counterpunch. Counterpunch.org. They haven't wrote a decent article for a while. Who is this? They got a new author or somebody. They got a new reporter. Anyways. Fujimori is a cheater. Princess Corruption. Her daddy was a cheater. She's a cheater. The moment that she lost, she said, fraud. It was like, you know, frankly, it looks like we are winning, and frankly, we did win. But this looks like the worst stealing that we've ever seen. Remember when Donald made that phone call, say, "Hey, can you find them 4 votes?" I know, but just can you find them? Can you just kind of look around? Fujimori, the candidate of the right, has refused to concede. She's got all the best legal minds. Within hours of the election tallies being available, Fujimori's team filed 134 challenges within the window of opportunity. They got another 111 challenges in hand. Fucking shit. Anyone who knows the Peruvian legal fraternity will realize that some of the most important names are on the Fujimori roster: Escobar, Garcia, Miranda, and Amado, Payet, Ray, Cave, Perez, Rodrigo, Elias, and Medrano, Rubio, Leguía, Normand, Rabaza, Alcazar, and De Las Casas. In Lima alone, the team had over 30 lawyers that worked. The Fujimori team had assembled these lawyers. Jesus Christ, like the OJ Dream Team. United States appointed a new ambassador to Peru. Her name is Lisa Kenna, former advisor to the U.S. Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, when he was trying to overthrow fucking Venezuela. China. He tried to start the shit with China. 9-year veteran at the CIA and a U.S. Secretary of State official in Iraq. Just before the election, Ambassador Kenna released a video in which she spoke of the close ties between the U.S. and Peru and the need for a peaceful transition from one president to another. The presidential transition sets an example for the entire region. That's the United States is saying this. She said, as if anticipating a serious challenge, if anyone would know about the interference in the electoral process in Latin America, it'd be the United States. It would also be key members inside the team of Keiko Fujimori, such as Fernando Pigliassi, former Interior Minister under President Alejandro Toledo, joined the Fujimori team for just this kind of contest for years. Ross Pigliassi had been critical of the crimes committed by Fujimori's father, President Alberto Fujimori, who is now serving a prison sentence. Working with the U.S. Embassy is on the resume of Ross Pigliassi. Oh, what the fuck is your point? I thought this was just going to... There's a coup taking place, apparently, okay? Pedro Castillo continues to hold the streets. The crowds will gather. They do not want the election to be stolen, but there is fear in Peru. Darker forces swirl about. Will the people be able to defeat them? So everything seems to be prepared. The U.S. ambassador with CIA credentials, a dirty tricks man with a habit of going to the embassy for help and with a record of asking the U.S. to malign the left, a grand old man with an allergy to his own people, and a candidate whose father was backed by the oligarchy when he conducted a self-coup in 1992. He got rid of Congress, right, dissolved Parliament, which apparently he wasn't allowed to do a self-coup. A fucking coup from the top, which is, I guess Britain and Haiti. Lisa Kenna. Okay, so Lisa Kenna, straight out of Mike Pompeo's office. So there you go. Watch out for Lisa McKenna or Lisa Kenna. She's going to try to overthrow the government. The hat and the pencil. Who is the Peru's president in waiting? Which of the streaming sites have I heard of? Peacock, Pluto, Tubi, Zumo, I have not. Good deal, but beyond the eye-catching photographs of him plowing fields in the Andes with oxen, stoking the wood fire in his modest mountain dwelling and riding to his local polling station on horseback, Pedro Castillo remains a largely unknown quantity. He gave few interviews and has declined to speak to the Financial Times. He has never worked in government, and until now is best known for leading a teacher strike in 2017. And yet, results from this month's presidential election suggest he has secured an epic victory. With just a handful of disputed votes left to count, he leads his rival Keiko Fujimori by 50,000 votes, which everybody frickin' says. And he'll be sworn in July 28th as one of the most unlikely leaders in Peru's rich history. Much of the confusion surrounding Castillo stems from his flip-flopping on policy during the campaign. One minute he was a radical thumper determined to nationalize companies and rip up Peru's 1993 constitution. The next, he's trying to assuage the country's terrified elite. They had nothing to fear from him, so nobody knows what to expect on the stump. He knows how to fire up a crowd. His simple message, no more poor people in a rich country, resonated with millions of downtrodden voters in impoverished villages in the Andes and Amazon basin. No more poor people in a rich country. No more poor people in a rich country. No more poor people in a rich country. What the fuck? That's unheard of. You ever heard of this crazy socialist, liberal, fucking communist talk? No more poor people in a rich country. Jesus Christ. He's one of us, said Edith Vega, that she shot for food in the town of Chota, close to where Castillo was born. He knows what our problems are. Pedro Castillo was calm and polite, but offered little in the way of policy. In his few local media interviews, he was sometimes hopelessly out of his depth, particularly when discussing the economy. They did the terrorist fist jab, right? A little fist bump in there. and they both seemed pretty happy. They both seemed pretty happy doing it, which that is nice to see, to be honest with you. Pedro Castillo is a disaster when he has to explain his ideas, but he's sensational when he reduces his message to a single phrase: rich versus poor, the wealth of those on the coast versus the poverty of those in the Andes, the dispossessed against those who have everything. He's a teacher who had a poor education himself, and it shows. To give one example, he's had problems explaining the difference between the national budget and the gross domestic product. Pedro Castillo was born in 1969 in the tiny hamlet of Puna, in the northern Andean region of Cajamarca, by some measures the poorest in the country. I'm from a neighboring area, and I know something of the hardships there from, said Modesta Montoya, a Peruvian scientist and part of Castillo's team of advisors. In my town, I knew children like Pedro who walked for hours to get to school, and they came into contact with the cities and made them aware of the injustices and inequality of opportunities that still exist in Peru. That's what led Pedro to want to change the country. The third of 9 children, Pedro Castillo went to a local school, helped his parents tend their crops, trained as a teacher, and married his childhood sweetheart, with whom he has 2 children. He taught in a rural primary school. He became a rondero, a peasant night watchman who, in the absence of the state, back in the dark days of the 1970s, 1980s, formed their own communal protection groups patrolling the Andes and meting out sometimes brutal justice to those they deemed criminals, including leftist guerrillas from the Maoist Shining Path organization. People who know him say that, like many mountain villagers, he is a social conservative. It's deeply ingrained in the Andean culture, one said, adding that Castillo is unlikely to champion gay rights, women's liberation, or relaxation of the abortion laws. His first venture into politics came in 2002, unsuccessfully for a mayoral post with Peru, Possible Peru, the party of then-President Alejandro Toledo. 15 years later, he reappeared, this time at the head of a striking teachers' union. In March, Castillo gave a local TV interview in which he said he wanted to revive the economy, negotiate contracts, nationalize Camisea, a gas project, eliminate private pension funds, and return money to Peruvian workers. He confined that as president. He would sit down with foreign mining companies to squeeze more money from them, even to the point of driving them from the country. I imagine that at the end of the conversation, multinationals are going to pack their bags and say, you know what, I'm out of here. And the Peruvian people will say, that's fine, you can go, because we want companies that come and invest and negotiate with the state, Castillo said. As U.S.-backed consultancy Tinnejo noted, Castillo would come to power with a shaky mandate, a lack of experience, a tendency to improvise an uncosted policy program, a weak position in Congress, and a radical rival to his leadership within his party. Like Castillo's own journey to the polling station in the first round of the election in April, when he paraded through the streets of Cajamarca on a skittish bucking horse, it promises to be a rough ride. I read 17 articles from The Guardian. Okay, Guardian, wants us to donate to you now. Peru election, if I'm not going to do Francesca's or Jackson's or Katie Halper's Patreon, I'm not going to do you, Guardian. 17 articles. Oh, shit, good times. Frankly, I mean, the paywall, you're not getting your ideas spread. You got a paywall? All right, fuck you. Your ideas are going to stay behind that fucking paywall. Maybe for the people that pony up, maybe they'll get to think about one of the thoughts that you wanted somebody to think about. Oh, Peru election, socialist Pedro Castillo claims victory ahead of official result. The son of peasant farmers says a new time has begun as vote count gives him a narrow lead against right-wing rival Keiko Fujimori. Peru socialist candidate Pedro Castillo has claimed victory in the presidential election after clinging on to a narrow lead as the lengthy vote count had ended, although his right-wing rival has pledged to fight the result and has yet to concede. Castillo ended the count 44,058 votes ahead of Keiko Fujimori, who has made allegations of fraud with no proof and has tried to get some votes thrown out. The result of the ballot held on June 6th has not been formally announced by the electoral authorities, but Pedro Castillo hailed the win on Twitter. A new time has begun. Pedro Castillo wrote alongside a picture of himself with arms raised and the word president in large font in his campaign slogan, "No more poor in a rich country. No more poor in a rich country." The president. Oh, that's so awesome. We need to share that tweet. We'll come back and share that tweet. He updated his Twitter profile to include President-elect of the Republic of Peru 2021 to 2026. The abrupt rise of the 51-year-old former teacher has rattled Peru's political and business elite and could have a major impact on the vital mining industry in the world's second biggest copper producer, where Pedro Castillo planning sharp tax hikes on the sector. Fujimori did not immediately make a public comment about the vote on Tuesday. On Monday, she repeated her bullshit, saying, more bullshit and bullshit, bullshit. Castillo's Free Peru party has rejected accusations of fraud, and international observers in Lima have stated that the elections were transparent. There were not widespread voter fraud. Castillo had vowed earlier in the day he would not allow rivals to deny the will of the people and overturn the election, which has seen supporters on both sides take to the streets in recent days. The son of peasant farmers, Castillo had 50.12% of the something. What is this?
You're watching Castillo English on Castillo.
Okay.
We're now
Tell us, sir,
live
English.
where Pedro Castillo is addressing his
Live. Latin America TV.
To start a fight, not only against the pandemic, but against
Keiko Fujimori did start fucking goddamned claiming fraud as soon as Pedro Castillo took a slight lead. As soon as he took a slight lead, as soon as the scales tipped towards him, she was like, fraud! I mean,
pandemics we've had in these 30 years. Brothers, dear compatriots, dear brothers, with that same spirit, with that same empathy, I call on all the political class, to all the forces of this homeland, to the social organizations, to all the organizations of this country to remain vigilant. So never again in Peru, starting from tomorrow, some people try to divide and to destabilize the country and democracy. Never again. Dear compatriots, it is the moment to strengthen unity, the unity of the Peruvian people. We have to face the pandemic without economic or political pretensions. We are all brothers. We are all Peruvians. And we all have to work for this motherland. I thank all the different sectors in the national level to the international organizations who have stated that the Democratic Party has not been altered. Thank you very much to the majors, to all the organizations in Peru, to the popular movement, which have recognized the will of the Peruvian people. In that same vein, I summon the electoral authorities that once and for all, to respect the will, the popular will of the country.
Let's give it a second to load. Jocelyn Taylor, who I was listening to in the beginning on the Breakfast Club. She's running for mayor of New York City. I like her. I like her. Can't believe I vote for Jocelyn Taylor and Paperboy and Maya Wiley and Diane Morales. And then I'm split between Ray McGuire and that Isaac Wright Jr.
On the top of your list of priorities. You did grow up in NYCHA, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
I just joined the board for the funds for NYCHA too. And so what are some things that you feel like need to happen as far as housing in New York City? Because it has been a huge issue, and now with the pandemic, things aren't getting any better. So what are some immediate solutions?
Well, the most immediate solution is to reinvest in public housing. We have to reinvest, and we have to ensure that these residents get their basic needs met.
Dear compatriots,
I want him to say, I am the president.
your fight, my fight, and the fight of the people have to solve the big problems of our motherland. This is proof that we are not Chavistas, we are not communists.
We are not Chavistas, we are not communists. I'd be okay with either one of those, to be honest with you. It's taken, said something about the strengthening the Peruvian people. He addresses his supporters.
And we have to guarantee a good economy.
Oh, come on. Sorry.